People judge on appearances. Not because they're shallow, not because they're cruel, but because they decide faster than they think. You've watched it happen in real time. Someone walks in late, slightly rushed, clothes a little off, eyes scanning the room. They haven't said a word yet, but the room has already placed them somewhere. Not consciously, just enough. Meanwhile, someone else shows up, calm, put together, quiet. They don't rush to explain why they're late or apologize for taking up space. Nobody asks them to prove anything. People just make room. That gap isn't imagination. It's not favoritism. It's how human judgment actually works when time is limited and pressure is present. I used to believe appearances were secondary. I told myself that if you were competent, fair, and consistent, people would eventually see past the surface, that substance would always outrun presentation. That belief cost me years. Here's the promise I'm making you. If you've ever felt underestimated, talked over, or strangely ignored despite doing everything right, you're about to understand why. And more importantly, how to stop bleeding leverage without turning into someone you don't respect. People don't assess you deeply. They assess you quickly. And once that first judgment lands, everything you say afterward gets filtered through it. Not because people are malicious, because once the brain commits to an early read, it resists reopening the case. You see this everywhere. At work, it's the person who speaks calmly and gets agreement without explaining much, while someone else brings stronger ideas and gets questioned to death. Not challenged because the ideas are weak, but because the delivery invites scrutiny. In families, it's the relative whose presence alone quiets the room, while the one who explains themselves gets pulled into endless debates. One gets deferred to, the other gets managed. In relationships, it's the person who looks slightly more composed, slightly less reactive, who ends up setting the emotional temperature. Not because they care less, because they look like they won't fall apart if things don't go their way. None of that is random. Under pressure, the brain does something very simple. It looks for signals. Not intentions, not values. Signals. Posture, pace, grooming, eye contact, stillness, confidence without urgency. That's it. Character doesn't disappear. It just doesn't get evaluated first. I learned this watching two people get promoted within months of each other. One was brilliant, hard-working, always prepared. They dressed casually, spoke quickly, explained everything. They wanted to be precise, helpful, fair. The other was competent, but not exceptional. They dressed cleanly, took their time answering, didn't rush to prove they belonged. Guess who people trusted with decisions? It wasn't about intelligence. It was about what their presence suggested before anyone opened a spreadsheet. Here's where people get uncomfortable. They hear this and think judging by appearance equals manipulation. It doesn't. It's how humans survive uncertainty. When people don't know you well, they rely on surface information to decide whether to relax or stay alert around you. That decision happens in seconds, and once it happens, it's sticky. Ignore this, and you pay for it quietly. You overperform to compensate. You clarify to exhaustion. You feel like you're always almost trusted, but never fully. You're included, but not deferred to. There's a certain type of person who suffers most here. They believe being real should be enough. They show up exactly as they are. They resist adjusting their presentation because it feels fake. They tell themselves authenticity should carry weight. So they arrive rushed. They dress for comfort, not impact. They speak while thinking. They fill silences before anyone asks them to. And they're confused when people don't take them seriously. Not because they lack substance, but because substance doesn't get assessed until perception opens the door. Every extra explanation weakens the signal. Every visible hesitation invites doubt. Every rushed movement reads as instability, even when it's just stress. That doesn't mean you need to become someone else. It means you need to recognize that appearance is the wrapper people read before they taste what's inside. Let me ground this. Picture a meeting. Two people disagree with a proposal. One leans forward, speaks fast, defends every detail, explains why it will work, answers objections before they're fully raised. The other sits back, pauses, says, "I don't think this holds under pressure," and stops. Who gets challenged harder? Not because the first person is wrong, because the second person looks certain. Here's the psychology, translated plainly. People use visual and behavioral shortcuts to decide who feels safe to follow. That's called heuristic processing. It just means the brain chooses speed over accuracy when it can't afford delay. Appearances are shortcuts. Now slow down here, because this is where people mess it up. Adjusting appearance isn't about dominance. It's not about intimidation. And it's not about pretending you're better than others. It's about removing noise from your signal. Every visible sign of chaos forces people to work harder to trust you. Most won't bother. They'll move on to someone who feels easier to read. There's a moment you'll recognize. You're asked to explain a choice you've already made. You feel the urge to justify it fully, to show you're thoughtful, responsible, fair. Instead, you say, "This is what I'm going with." And you stop. No edge, no performance, just steadiness. That moment feels risky. Your body wants to fill the gap. Your brain tells you silence equals weakness. That discomfort is the cost of being taken seriously. Here's what you don't say. You don't say, "Does that make sense?" Because that hands your authority away. What usually happens next is revealing. Either people align or they challenge. And if they challenge, you're finally dealing with the real resistance instead of appearances. Families reveal this pattern brutally. There's always one person who explains everything. Why they can't come, why they're tired, why they need space, why they reacted the way they did. Over time, they become background noise. The one who simply says, "I'm not available," and repeats it calmly, gets more respect. Not more love, more respect. That shift feels harsh. It also feels unfair. But it's real. When access changes, perception follows. There's another group that struggles quietly here. The quiet achievers. They believe results should speak for themselves. They dress down, they stay invisible, they let others talk. Sometimes that works. Often, louder people rewrite the story around their work. Because results without framing are easy to claim. This is why public figures who manage perception survive storms that destroy others. It's not fairness. It's control over how they're read. If you don't shape your appearance and presence, someone else will do it for you. Here's a sentence you can use the next time you feel pulled into justifying yourself. "I'm comfortable with how I handled that." Then stop. No extra explanation. What you don't say is, "I hope you understand." Because understanding isn't the currency here. Stability is. What happens next tells you everything. Either the conversation moves forward, or the other person escalates. And now you're dealing with the real issue, not surface judgment. Dating makes this painfully obvious. The person who looks grounded, composed, and slightly less reactive usually sets the pace. Not because they care less, because they look like they'll be okay either way. Desire responds to calm certainty, not transparency. When you stop trying to look relatable and start looking stable, dynamics shift. That shift is uncomfortable at first. People test it, they push boundaries, they interrupt. They wait for you to break composure. When you don't, the room adjusts. Not instantly, gradually. This pattern usually starts early. A lot of people learned that blending in kept them safe. They softened their presence, they minimized themselves. They explained to avoid conflict. That worked once. It doesn't work now. That's not a flaw. It's an outdated survival strategy. Updating it doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. Clear posture, clear tone, clear pacing. Because people don't experience your intentions. They experience what you show before you speak. And what you show often matters more than what you mean. Here's your 24-hour test. Tomorrow, pick one interaction where you normally rush, explain, or over-justify. Slow your body down. Say less. End your sentence cleanly. Watch what happens next. You'll feel the discomfort first. Then you'll notice the shift. If this hit something familiar, you already know why. If it didn't, you'll notice it soon enough. Thanks for being here. If this helped you put words to something you felt for a long time, hit like. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of clarity. And if you're willing, leave a comment with the first moment you realized effort didn't equal authority. Final thought. People don't judge who you are. They judge what you show before they decide how to treat you.